as existing, if we at all refer to anything as existing, we are associating isness with what we place is in existence. You cannot connect darkness and light, and similarly, you cannot connect isness and nothingness. They cannot be put together. That is what this text is saying, and then we would be moving forward. Uh, now, however, the Vedanti makes a concession. The concession is like this, that whenever we have to prove or disprove anything or explain anything to you, we would be using the language of everyday vyavahara, and there would be a temptation to believe on your part, on the part of anybody who is attending a Vedanta class, as if, because we are talking about Brahma Anubhava, Brahma Sakshatkara, you may be tempted to feel that Brahman is something that you can touch and feel the way you can touch and feel a deity, God, or anything of that sort. But that's not how it is. This is a manner of explaining during the Dvaita Dasa, because that is how Vyavahara is possible. But ultimately, all this may or may not be true in the Paramarthik Artha, absolutely not true. However, we continue to behave as if they are in use. And then finally he says, Tada stimira gambhiram natejo natatamas anakhyam anavivyaktam sat kinchit avasisyate. Now he is trying to explain how in the ultimate level of consciousness, when you become self-aware, you actually do not experience anything as an objective experience. The experiencer, the objective experience, and the experience itself, they are sort of dissolved into one unified reality. They are not three different realities. What is the best example? He's saying, look here, that let's pick up one example. When you are in a deep, let's example that you are in a deep meditative state, or you are in a samadhi state, or you had that nirvikalpa samadhi, or for that matter, even if you accept that you are explaining uh, that Brahma Tattva, that Atma Tattva, you would never be in a position to capture it in words the way you capture your experience of watching a cricket match, meeting your child, taking a class, going out for shopping, having a meeting, or attending a marriage party. That kind of description for Brahma Sakshatkara is not possible. Why? Because he's saying in that stage, you have that particular state of samadhi is being explained, where stimira gambhiram natejo na tamastatam. So then he's saying that he's explaining how he's saying that whenever you are in that stage, tada, whenever you are mentioning that, where when you are doing that particular atma viveka, when you go beyond experience of the pancha mahabhutas, and finally what remains when all these upadhis are removed, all the superimpositions are gone, he's saying timira gambhiram vastu avasishyate. What remains is that sanmatra, that sanmatra, that satta matra. There is no adjective, there is no description, there is no guna you associate with which. This is nishalam sarvavritti nibritam nirvikaram gambhiram ativa gudham aprameyam. Prameya means what? What is knowable. If Atma is not knowable, then why should we do any Vedanta sadhana? Because we'll never reach there. No. Brahman is prameya, but not comparable with other experiences, other cognitive activities, where we know something, like we know a pen, a pencil. We even know are the pain in the body, our emotions. No, it's different, because there is no dichotomy between the knower and the known in that state. That's why it's often referred to as aprameyam. Because even with the help of your mind, you cannot treat it as an object of your experiences. Na tejaha, na tamaha. There is neither light nor darkness, because it's beyond all these states. Okay. Now, somebody might ask this question, and I have raised that partly in the last class. What about good and bad? There'll be no duality, and because you would take from this Advaita Shruti Taittiriya Upanishad, yato, yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. So there is no bani pravartate, manopi na gachati, mind cannot go there, you cannot describe it. That is what is Brahma Swarupa. Okay. Anavivyaktam, it cannot be described, it is not an object of perception of your external senses, it's not an object of perception of your mind. Na drishtam, na shritam, na sprishtam, na rasitam, na dhratam. You cannot smell it, you cannot taste it, you cannot touch it, right? Then what is it? He's saying, look, साक्षी रूपेण स्वयमेव प्रबुद्धम एवं सर्व प्रपंच लक्षणानाम निरासे कृतमात्रे sat kinchit avasishyate. Sat, that isness only. Like, for example, you say there is a dog, there is a cat. You remove all the dog and cat, what remains is that isness. It's hard to discuss this, hard to understand it, but just to think about it. This is a deeply philosophical question, very deeply philosophical if you get into it. I was talking to some science students, and there's something called this in mathematics. There is something called Gödel's incompleteness theorem, where he would say that any particular, all the principles that are validated within a system, none of the principles within that system can validate that system. There are different truth propositions which are validated within a certain system. None of those truth propositions can validate that system. Think about it. So all the Indriya pramanas, Pratyaksha pramana, Anumana pramana, all that we are using to make sense of reality. What proof are we using to validate our power of validating other experiences? Think about it. So that is outside of it. So there is a consciousness. By consciousness, I mean there is a reality which in a way transcends and supersedes the cognitive experiences and the fields in which we have different kind of cognitive actions. These cognitive activities are validated as right or wrong within that system. But that system is validated by what? That is our Sakshi Chaitanya. Sat kinchit avasishyate naiva shunyam na asat na vilakshanam kintu sat kinchit eva avasishyate. Now that which remains, Buddhist will say, is shunya. Okay? No, it is sadasat vilakshanam. That is the ultimate thing which remains. That is what is called sattamatra, and that is Brahman. Anavivyaktam, anakhyam without name, cannot be described as an object. Sat kinchit avasishyate. Now, just two things I was trying to discuss in the last thing where we concluded this particular shloka. What about ethics? As a professor, as a teacher, you are going to meet your students and they might ask this question to you very much. They would ask this question. What is the question? They would say that, you know, are we going to live a life where there is no ethics, where there is no right or wrong? Because for any right or wrong to be there, for any right and wrong to be there has to be somebody who can do deliberation. You have to do deliberation on what is right and what is wrong. And there is a moral question on which you are deliberating. If you say everything is Brahman and unified, then how would you explain interpersonal relation. If you have an ailing mother and there is a party, you say, I cannot go to the party, I would have to spend time with my ailing mother. And that moral decision you took because you thought it's important, it's part of your duty and responsibility to look after your ailing mother. There is duality, isn't it? So if you say everything is Brahman, how do you account for individual moral choices we make? It's a very, very difficult question. Similarly, you are painting and you are making a beautiful rose. You are describing the smile of a beautiful little girl. You are writing poetry or you are writing a story. All this will become impossible, isn't it? How do you make sense of your aesthetic sense or your aesthetic judgment if there is no duality? How do you account for all this? You see, the answer to these questions is like this that as we are discussing the truth about our consciousness, we are not denying levels of experience where we would have to make moral choices. Vedanta, by talking about Brahman, is not becoming insensitive about gender questions. It's not becoming apathetic morally, or in aesthetic terms, it doesn't become without a sense of beauty. No, the student of Vedanta is going to do all this at the same time. It would bring in that new element of a universalistic consciousness where it will not obsess about any particular X or Y, which it might love, the student might love or might appreciate, might judge against, favor or disfavor. And yet it will know that all this is fine at this level of my consciousness, but the ultimate truth is beyond all that. And there's a lot of discussion which is going on that when you actually deal with reality and the more and more you think about it, it's quite possible that you might notice you losing interest in the details and you finding it more tempting to be a little secluded. And some psychologists believe that this particular approach of Indian yogic and philosophical approach in fact would make human beings more selfish. That is what some of the people are inclined to say. But I would like to ask you to think deeper about it. That is not the only way out of that situation. In fact, when we have a universalistic consciousness, we would have that loving attitude where our love is not about fascination for a particular person, but our love is about a sense of awareness where we embrace all around us within that consciousness as part of one unifying reality. So you are actually seeing yourself in everyone, you are seeing yourself in everything. The Vyavahara Dasa, it's all there. That is how he's saying, so far you're not liberated, you are dealing with different layers of consciousness, you are not dismissing it. Okay? Now we are going to the next verse. The having dealt with the whole philosophical challenges from the Buddhists who are Sunyavadis, now the Vedanti is going to deal with the Nyayayikas. So before these will be about 5 slokas, which is a debate with the Nyayayikas. First, you need to understand what does the Nyayika believe in. The Nyayika is a realist who, like a Christian or a Muslim, believes in a creator God, a creative God, one God, creative God. And then how does he create? There are certain nitya and anitya vastus. There are transient and permanent entities. The permanent entities include the paramanus, or the atoms. This is the atomic theory of reality. The atoms are which do not have a body. They are too subtle. they would appear to have a body if there is at least a trishrunaka. That means at least six atoms are together. Then you will have two atoms, it's a dyunaka, and when you have three dyunaks, you will have a trishrunaka, which is essentially six atoms coming together. Then they gain some visibility, some objectivity in a perceptual domain, right? And then all these anityas have both nitya rupa and anitya rupa. When they become karya rupa, like for example, a tiny speck of gold is not even visible. But then when you have an ornament made out of it, this is karya rupa and that is anitya. Paramanu rupa is nitya. That is nitya rupa. The special qualities of all these dravyas, the paramanus, lies in these paramanus. That is the vishesha, is the nitya dravya vritti. And God is a creator, and He creates all this whole world is created by Him. That is what they say. Now, for us, the Advaita Vedantins, reality is one. So, if you say God, and then there are atoms, and then there is a manifest reality which they consider real, then this is a conundrum. You can never get out of it. But they believe that through proper discrimination and dedication to God, you can get liberation. That is what is that is their soteriology, which is the theory of their liberation, which is very similar in a way with some fine distinction. The kind of theories you have, say, for example, in the Christian ethics or in the Islamic ethics, that there is an all powerful God at the top, who, with your sadhana, here Nyayakas bring in a lot of philosophy and devotion, you will get redemption from here. That is their theory. Now, the Vedanti is not ready to accept it because that brings in duality. And duality is the source of misery, birth and death for the Vedanti. How does he refute? The Nyayikas fought a long philosophical battle with the Buddhists. And why? In order to reassert the idea of God. The Nyayikas had a long battle because they wanted to prove the world is real and there is a God. The Buddhists didn't believe there's a God who is a creator God, and they didn't believe that this reality, the phenomenal reality we see, is real. This is just an appearance. And they shared that perception with the Vedantists. The Vedantists accept Ishvara as a reality, which is a Sopadika Vastu. Sopadika means Maya, Upahita Chaitanyam, pure consciousness. With Maya, magical powers, he becomes God. But the story of creation is not ultimately true for the Advaita Vedantins. Creationism is not a real story. This is a story told in the Vedas in order to make us lose interest in the details of creation and look for eternity and eternal freedom from the cycle of birth and death. Okay? So, having said that, let's now move towards how the debate starts there. But before that, we would have to, I'll have to share that page with you where you'd be looking at the verse number 41. Okay. Now, this is the verse. Now, what the Vedanti does is he accepts the view of Nyayika as a Ardhangikara, and then he tries to hold the hand of the Nyayikas to persuade him to move towards a Vedantic point of view or Vedantic understanding of reality. What are the question in the mind of the Nyaya student? Nanu janomatvena anityasya bhumyadera asatvam astu nityakasasya asatvam katham angrikete iti sankate. Now, the Nyaya students accept Akasha, Dik, Kala, they're all Nitya. Akasha is Nitya. He's saying, Janimatvena anityesya bhumyadehe asatum astu. Like, for example, earth and water and fire and air. All these are asatva. Why? Because they are born, they are created realities. Janimatva. Janimatva, Janiman. That means what? Janimat means what has been born, which has an origin. How can it be Nitya? It has an origin. Fine. Let there be asatvam astu. Let there be not paramarthika satya. Nitya kasasya asatvam katham angrikiyate. He's saying, why are you accepting? The akas is Nitya, we are saying. Why are you having a problem? It is sankate. Okay. The Nyayayika has this question. Let's look at his question. Nanu bhumyadikam mabhut paramāṇānvamtanāsataha katham te biyato sattvam buddhimaroti te chet. Now, this is only a question of the Nyayayika, which the Vedanti is entertaining to refute. Nanu bhumyadikam mabhut paramāṇu antanasataha. He is giving you some concession. Bhumyadi, Bhumi Adi. Bhumi means Prithvi Tattva. Adi would include Jala and Agni and a Vayu. So Bhumyadikam Ma Bhut. Let it not be real. Why? Paramanu Antanasataha. Because ultimately, these are Karya Rupas. Ultimately, everything is atom. That is real. That is Nitya. Bhumi and Akasha and water and air. Okay, you are saying they are Anitya. I got no problem. However, why? Te biyataha asatvam. Why are you arguing? Biyat is what Akasha. Why are you arguing that biyato sattvam, biyataha asatvam, buddhim arohati? Why is it finding logical foundation in your thinking? This is the doubt in the minds of the Nyayayika. Iti chet, if that is your question. The Vedanti will immediately come around and he will give a very good answer. And what is the Vedantin's answer? Let's look at it. The Vedantin is, now in the Ramakrishna Tika, there is not much, but there is a bit of discussion by others, and they have very good discussion on it. What is the question in the mind of the Nyayayika? Paramanu antam paramanu vishishtam, because they are made of atoms. Nasataha, that means they are anitya. Ataha bhumyadikam nasti, that means bhumyadikam, they are not nitya. Tesham paramanu nam karanatvena nityatvam nasyat. So of these paramanus, there shall be no nityatva. So that is what you are trying to say. And he's saying, let that be. There's some light problem. Give me 1 second. I'll try to fix it. What is the issue? Okay. So that is what he's trying to say. Okay. And we will move forward. He's saying, asatvam buddhi upapadyate iti prashna. Therefore, okay. Now, they may be anitya. Okay. Because ultimately, it is only the paramanus which are nitya. And Swarupena, they are nitya, and they belong to the Karana Varga. And the Karya Rupa, Bhumi, and the earth, and water, and fire. You see, in Akasha, there is no Karya Rupa and Karana Rupa. In air, you have atoms, which are Karana Rupa, they are Nitya. And then you have air, the atoms, which are atoms coming together, you have Karya Rupa, and therefore you can feel it through your sparsha. So they become Anitya. So all these, like for example, Teja, you can see through your eyes. They become perceptible through your sense organs. When they are Karya Rupa, they are products. And when they become causal entities, which are in the atomic nature of theirs, they are Nitya. However, in case of Akasa, in case of the sky, there is no such thing as Akasa in Karya Rupa and Akasha in Karana Rupa. Can anybody say that space has some atoms? No, we don't know. Space doesn't have any atoms. and then you have molecules, or you have some bonds in space. Nothing of that sort. Space is space. Therefore, that is Nitya. Why don't you accept that? Okay, that is the question. And the Vedanti is absolutely amused. He has no problem. What is he saying? He refuses. He's saying, why don't you understand it? Atyantam nirjagadyoma yatha te buddhimashritam tadeva tannirakasham kuto nasrayate matim. The Vedanti is very, very. And what he does, he is turning around the tables, he's turning the tables on the student. What he's trying to say, he's saying, Atyanta nirjagat vyoma yatha te buddhim ashritam. Vyoma is what? Akasha. Is there any physical movement in Akasha? No. There is no activities. Yatha te buddhim ashritam. You recognize that as a reality. You Nyaya students accept that as a reality. Can you see them? Is it pratakshataha praptaha? Can you see that through your sense organs? No. You are saying Akasha is Savdashraya. Sound moves in space. You can hear sound, therefore, you are doing Anumana Pramana in order to establish the existence of Akasha. It's not Pratakshataha Praptam. You cannot ascertain the presence of space only through Prataksha Pramana or sense perception. And he's saying, Tadeva san nirakasam. Tadeva sat. The ta has become na because of sandhi. Tadeva sat nirakasham. Kuto nasrayate matim. He's now trying to lift that student. If that is you, if you are trying to say that, look here, my boy, it's very simple. He's saying, if you are so much tempted, okay, if you are tempted to believe that only Akasa is real, okay, I got no problem. Okay, he's saying, why can't you not in the same manner as you accept Akasha as a reality? Akasa is not available to your senses. You are doing Anumana Pramana. You are able to hear sound, and because sound stays in space, space exists, Akasa exists. Everything exists in Atma. That is what Vedanta says. Why can't you lift the sharpness of your mind to the next level to comprehend the way Akasa is Niradhara? You cannot even touch it or anything. Same way, this Atma is also a very subtle reality. And you can use your yukti. Why can't you use your yukti at the next level to establish the existence of Atma? You know what he's trying to say? Yadi anumanina bhumyadinam layah svikritaha. That all this bhumi and all this chatur, the chatushtaya, bhuta chatushtaya, they get dissolved in the paramanu. Akasyasya tu nityatam tarkataha uparnam. And then you have logic that it is nitya because there is no karya karana bheda. Tari king karana yena akasam api Niskasya kevala sanamatram tava buddho na upapadyate. Then why don't you go to the next level from the Akasha? You are doing a lot of logical hair splitting to prove the existence of space, the existence of sky, which you cannot see. But you're saying that sound is there, and sound cannot exist if there is not a platform for it, and space is the platform. Therefore, Akasha is there. Okay, I'm just asking you to jump a little more to the next higher level of understanding. Why can't you then not accept Sanmatra? Yathanumana pramanam akasasya astitvam shikaroti tatha eva anumanena tasmadapi param nityam satswarupam brahma swikurtam na viruddhyate. The way you are trying to establish the presence of Akasha, similarly, you can also use your logic to establish the Sat Swarupa Brahma that is always exists. And it's beyond this Panchabhutas. It's also beyond Akasha, because Akasha is also Sopadika. Tasmad etasmad akasha sambhutah. Shruti says Akasha is also a creation. Akasha is not permanent. That is what he's saying. Therefore, he's saying that let's go to the next level. Now, when that particular thing is mentioned, then the student of these Nyaya Sastra has another problem. Then he has this question, which is again refuted by the Vedanti in the verse number 43. And I'll share the screen so that you can look at it. Give me a second. I'm going to, where is it? Yeah. This is the verse number 42. We are going to the verse number 43. A little philosophical hair splitting, very easy. Nirjagad vyoma drishtam prakasa tamasi vina quo ishtam ko drishtam kinchate pakshe na prataksham viyat khalu. The Nyayika student is going to turn around and then argue with you that if he says no, this particular vyoma or akasha, which doesn't have any movement, is perceivable with the help of sense organs. If he argues like this, no, pratakhyataha, I can have akasha jnana. Pratakhyata means pratakya pramanataha. Through direct sense perception, I can ascertain the presence of akasha if he argues in such a way. Okay. Where we are talking about the Suddhakasha, and then he's saying, if you at all say that it is Pratyaksha Gamya, Prakasa Tamasi Vina, Prakasa Tamasi Vina, because to see, you need the help of Bahya Loka. These are the samagris. These are the, you cannot see something without light or darkness. You need the help of light and darkness to ascertain physical realities. Isn't it? All of us need it. And then somebody might ask this question. I can ask this question. Are you being able to ascertain the presence of Akasha? Kva drushtam kinchate pakshe na pratakhyam viyat khalu. How he's saying, if you accept that Akasha indriya agocharam na, Akasha is not something which cannot be accessed by the sense organs. That means it can be indriya gochara. That means through indriya jnana, we can ascertain the presence of akasha. If you argue like this, then you have to tell me, kutaha drishtam, where did you see and how did you see it? Okay? Because akasha generally is not at all visible to the naked eye or the naked senses. So, how do you argue like this? He is essentially trying to refute the argument of the Nyayikas. What do they say that these Bhuta Chatushtaya, what are these Bhuta Vargas? Leave Akasa out, then you have Vayu, Agni, Jala, and a Prithvi, these four. These are anityas. Akasa is nitya. And they also argue that Akasha Pratyakya is also possible. Then they have to be asked this philosophical question that how do you manage to ascertain the presence of Suddhakasha, because you cannot see it, it doesn't have any color, it doesn't have any physical form. Okay, how are you able to see this? That is the challenge. What is the philosophical problem there? Why cannot see? Why they cannot see? Prakasa tamasi vina nirjagad vyomam drishtam chet ko drishtam vada na drishtam. Then you have to explain to me whether you can see or you cannot see. If you cannot see, then why do you accept akasa is real? If you cannot access it through your senses, and if you cannot access it through your senses, and yet you accept its reality, same is true about our Brahman. Brahman is also not visible to the naked eyes. What is your objection to accepting the presence of Brahman? Whether you are happy to accept the presence of Akasha is real, but you have some problems with accepting Brahman is real. Neither can you see Akasha. What's your problem with Brahman? Because there are a lot of Upanishadic insights where there is proof that the Brahman exists as much as Akasha exists. Right? This is the simple thing. Okay? So, the simple argument is the way your akasa, your sky is not ascertainable, its presence is not, cannot be validated with the help of external senses or with the mind. Similarly, our Brahman may not be, you may not be able to ascertain or validate the presence of Brahman with the help of your external senses or your mind, and if you accept is akasha, the sky is real, so should you accept the Brahman as real. Okay, that is the simple point here. Then let's go to the next verse, which is equally interesting. Yeah, there was a bit of discussion here. He has mentioned yoga vasishtadu vasishtasya rashtavyam. He has mentioned, you see, there was a bit of discussion. That was an earlier thing. And we would try to go there. There was, in fact, there was a bit of discussion. What is that Brahma Tattva? Because Sat Kinchit Avasishyate, it is that particular sentence, and it is taken from Yoga Vasishta. There, when Ramachandra is asking questions, what happens during Pralaya Avastha and blah, 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 there is this in Yoga Vasishta, he's saying, Yadidam drishyate kinchit jagasthavara jangamam sarvam sarva prakaradhyam sasura kinnaram tan maha pralaye prapte rudradi parinamini bhavatyasad cha kwapi yati vinashyati. Nothing stays actually during the Pralaya Avastha. Tatah stimira gambhiram natejo natatamas Anakhyam anavivyaktam satkinchid avasisyate. So these two sentences are taken from Yoga Vasishta in the Panchadasi. So I just, it has just slipped my mind, and that is beautifully here captured when you are looking at the Ramakrishna Tika here is mentioning that you should be able to go to Yoga Vasishta, and this is discussed at length. Now we're going to the verse number 44. Okay. Now the Nayayika student has another question, and that has to be answered by the Advaita Vedanti. Nanu darsana bhavaha sadvastuni api samana ityasankhya satah sarvanubhava siddhatvat maivam ityaha. You know what is the question? You say that akasa is not experienceable, right? Akasa is not experienceable, and therefore don't you argue that akasa uh, doesn't exist. You argue akasa exists, I got no problem. The Advaita Vedanti says, if your akasa cannot be touched, felt, seen, and yet it exists, our Brahman also cannot be felt or seen or touched. It also exists. What's your problem? The moment the Vedanti says, the Nyayayika can make a turnaround and ask a counter question. It's a beautiful philosophical counter question. And what is that philosophical question? The philosophical question is this: oh, really? So your Brahman exists which cannot be felt or touched or seen? Is that what you are trying to say? Cannot be tasted? Is that what you're saying? The Advaita Vedanta says yes. Oh, fine. Then you have lost your battle. Advaita Vedanta asks, why? How have I lost my battle? Because you always say that because of Brahma Sakshatkara, a person gets liberated. You right now admitted to me that your Brahman, like Akasha, cannot be touched, cannot be felt, cannot be seen, cannot be tasted. So, what do you mean by Brahmanubhuti, which is the goal of all your Vedanta sadhana and all philosophical discussions? You cannot, then you are saying that, yeah, Brahman exists. Okay, I agree, Brahman exists. So what? How does it help anybody? Because Brahmanubhuti or Brahma Sakshatkara is now put into question. By being felt, it cannot be tasted, it cannot be seen, it cannot be tasted. You said this. Then immediately the Vedanti recognizes, oh my God, this guy is a very serious guy, and he's bringing in now a deep philosophical question, and he needs to be answered. Right? You have a very sharp defense lawyer. Then the prosecutor looks at the law books and the case studies and everything and comes back with a counter question or a counter argument. That is how the Vedanti has to remove this. Look at the verse number 44. Sadvastu suddham त्वस्माभिर् निश्चितेरनुभूयते तुष्णीं स्थितौ न शून्यत्वं शून्यबुद्धेश्च वर्जनात्. Just look at these two sentences because I'll remove it. Sadvastu suddham tu asmavihi nischiteihi anubhuyate. Don't get into that kind of a quandary. Don't allow that confusion. I did not say because you cannot touch or feel or taste Brahman, you cannot experience Brahman. You cannot have Atma Sakshatkara. You cannot compare Atma Sakshatkara with the experience of having an ice cream. You cannot compare the experience of Atma Sakshatkara with that of wearing a good pair of clothes or going to a party or sleeping. These are mental experiences. Brahma Sakshatkara is referred to as Aparoksha Anubhuti, not Pratyaksha. It's not sense perception. It is not Paroksha. It's not like listening to what Brahman is and thinking you know it. That's what we do. That Brahma's existence is ascertained by Paroksha Anubhuti. You learn from your own experience, and that Brahmakara Vritti is not sense perception. It's Aporoksha. It's direct perception, but not through the mind. Mind is used as a means to reach there, but mind loses all function when we are there. Because now there is no body, there is no mind, there is no ego, there is nothing, there is only one, that absolute luminous consciousness. Saying Sadavastu Suddham. Suddham Sadavastu Tu Asmavi. However, my dear, unlike you who fail to experience Akasha, we do experience Atma. Nischitehi anubhuyate. This is Vyavasayatmika Buddhi Rekeha Kurunandana. Bhagavan says, you have to have Nishayatmika Buddhi. Definitely know it. Otherwise, Sastra Anarthakya Prashangat. What is the point of doing all this Sastra? We will not get liberation. And when and how that happens, tushnim stitau nasunyatvam. If somebody says, yeah, but where do you get it? No, in deep contemplative samadhi. But in contemplative samadhi, it says, yoga chittavritti nirodha. There is no chittavritti, there is shunya. That's what the Buddhist will say. The Vedanti says, no, 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 no. Tushnim stitau na sunyatvam. Why? Sunya buddhescha varjanat. First of all, what do you mean by sunya buddhi? You have a ghata, you have ghata buddhi. You have a pen, you have pen buddhi, kalama buddhi, puspa buddhi. Buddhi is what? Vikara of your intelligence, it assumes a certain form. You're thinking about an object. Sunya, does it exist? No. How can you have sunya buddhi? It's refuted already. I have explained to you. Sunya, asit, mutually contradictory. Sunya buddhi is paradoxical. There is nothing called sunya and a buddhi. How can you have sunya buddhi? Buddhi means always there is some object of contemplation. And they will count question us. So you are having Brahma buddhi? Yes. We don't use the word Brahma buddhi. We say Brahmakara vritti. Vritti is that Vikara. The consciousness modifies itself all the time, thinking about Brahman. But there comes a point where Brahma buddhi, if accepted as real, there will be dualism. Brahma and Brahma buddhi. Brahma and Brahmakara vritti. Therefore, vritti giving us Brahman dissolves itself. There is no more any thinking. There is no more contemplation. There is no more studies. On a lighter note, I had a senior and she was very wise, very sharp in philosophy. And she used to make fun of everything and she used to cheer us up. We were junior students in Delhi University. And she used to say, so there was somebody who's getting married and all. So he's going to now terminate his love. I said, what do you mean by terminate his love? He's going to get married to the person he loves. She would laugh and say, yeah, but the whole craving, that gets terminated. Because then the whole thing you describe as love doesn't exist. It's marriage, it's a different reality. Similarly, if we look at it in a spiritual sense, when you're craving for Brahman, you are trying to have Brahmakara vritti. But once you reach there, this Brahmakara vritti, the sadhana, triggers that particular last spell of luminosity where the ahankara is permanently dissolved, mind is permanently dissolved, and there is that absolute luminosity where aham brahmasmi, Brahman. There is no Ashmi, there is no Aham. That we reach. And then do we stay there for all time? In practical terms, you would come back to your Vyavahar after some time. Otherwise, who will teach what is Brahman? This whole Shastra Parampara will become impossible. Therefore, the Guru returns to take care of the students. From that particular Jnana Samadhi Avastha, it's not a typical Yoga Samadhi where there is what is referred to as kind of that mindful vacuum or whatever. No, you come back to advise what is. So it's the meditation on the Shruti Vakya, meditation on the Upanishadic truths. You reach there through Brahmakara Vritti. Having reached there, you can return to Vyavahara in order to compassionately help your children, your students, also reach there, but you are all the time there. In Vyavahara only you come back, but in the letter and spirit, all the time you're there. You're not coming back. You already reached there. You are liberated. That is what is referred to as Jivana Mukta. Videha Mukta is when the mental game is also over. You that particular prarabdha check you have gets exhausted. The body falls. Then you have Videha Mukti. These are the different theories about what we mean by liberation. So, Nanu tushni bhave shunyameva. If somebody says that if you stay in samadhi, that is only shunyata, itarasya kasyapi pratitya bhava. He says because you don't experience anything else. If the Nyayika raise that question, or if the Buddhi student gets through the back door and raises that question, he's saying sunyasyapi shunya pratitya bhavat sunyamapi na sambhavati. Do you have sunya pratiti? Pratiti of sunya. It doesn't exist. Sunya also doesn't exist. That we have already explained. Therefore, we do have a clear and very nice we are not moving the stick in wilderness in darkness trying to point at what is Brahman. We have that reality. Let's look at a bit of discussions what they're trying to say here. So, in the Bhagavad Gita also, Bhagavan says, what is the samadhi? There are certain similes which are given. Huh? Different metaphors are used to make sense of this particular higher state of absolute equanimity or unity of the mind. Some people say nivata deepavat. It doesn't move. Taila dharavat. Because the oil, if you have ever seen how you have the kachi ghanis where they press oil out of the local oil processing units. But I have been to tribal areas where what they do is they collect these oil seeds and put it in a piece of cloth and tie it up, and there is a big piece of stone on which they place another big piece of stone, and there is a particular channel through which the oil which is dripping out of this particular cotton container, it sort of drips. And then at the bottom, you'll see there's a thin line. It's like a straight line, and there is a container at the bottom of the channel. So it goes and it drips continuously without any interruption. This particular thing, Taila Dharavat, is again and again quoted both in Bhagavad Gita and in yogic texts to explain how the mental vibrations, it becomes kind of very monotonous, very uniform, and absolutely there is no distraction. And the frequency, of course, there's a lot of studies they do that, this alpha, beta, and gamma, and very sharp waves which are sort of generated. So that is what he's trying to say. And this is here, the Vedanti is saying that samadhi, don't you ever confuse as an experience of sunya. Okay, so that is not sunya upalabdhi, but here for a Vedanti who is meditating on the Brahman with the help of Upanishadic contemplation, he has Brahmakar vritti, and at the end, what awaits him is Sakshat Sadvastu Anubhavaha. He has that Brahma Sakshatkar. Okay. So Sarva Vritti Nirodha, Chitta Vritti Nirodha means Sunya Anubhava. No, nothing of that sort. There is absolutely nothing of that. Because that has been refused already. That has been already explained. Okay. Now in the next verse, so in the next verse now, what he's trying to say, let's look at him. Okay. I would again share that particular page with you, and we will look at the verse number 45. Nanutari sadvastu sadbuddhyabhavat sattvamopi na ghatate iti sankate. He is the Nyaya student. He is back to square one. He's saying you are saying Sunya Varjana. Sunya Buddhi is not possible. Is it so? Okay. Sadbuddhi is possible? Are you able to imagine Brahman in your mind? Buddhi is some kind of a vikara of your consciousness. Intellectually, what it means to have Brahma Sakshatkar. Can you write it in a paragraph? Give it back to me. I want to have a look at it. Sunya Buddhi is not possible. How is Sadbuddhi possible? Because he knows that the Advaita Vedantin can be trapped here. Because the Vedantin had just a while ago told him it's avang manashogochara. It's beyond the mind, beyond words. So it cannot be subject matter of buddhi, of intellect. If Sunya Buddhi is not possible, is Sadbuddhi possible? That is the question. So he's saying, Na ghadate iti sankate. So therefore this question. What is the question in a poetic form? It's a beautiful verse. Sadbuddhirapi che nasti mastvasya swaprabhatvatah nirmanaska tvasakshitvad sanmatram sugamam nrinam. Now he raises a question. The Vedanti accepts it and then takes the discussion to the next higher level. What does the Nyayika say? Sadbuddhi api chet nasti. Sadbuddhi api nasti chet. If I argue that Sadbuddhi is also not available, You cannot prove there is sadbuddhi. Brahmakara vritti, you are saying, fine. But that results in a reflection of the Brahman in intellect, so you can capture that in words. That's not possible. The Vedanti smiles and says, Ma astu. Okay, fine. The chidabhasa, chidvat abhasate iti chidabhasa. The mind is able to narrate, make sense of a lot of things, isn't it? Yeah. There is where this Gödel's incompleteness theorem comes into picture. What is the point that he is raising in mathematics? Atma is Swayam Prakasha. We never said even once. The Atma requires the help of intellect to be visible to the student, to any one of us. The intellect is a far inferior reality compared to pure consciousness. If by consciousness you are reducing consciousness to a process of the brain, it's cognition of something, right? It's a cognitive activity. The moment you talk about cognitive activity, you are bringing in some objects. Because cognitive activity about what? About some subject, about some object, something there that you are thinking about. But when we are talking about the Suddha Brahman, we are not talking about cognitive activity. We have gone much beyond that. And there, it's Swayam Prakasha, it validates itself. We are not taking the help of intellect to validate the Manaskatva Sakhitvat. The Sakshi Chaitanya is Avang Manashagochara. It doesn't take the help of manas to be evident. Sanamatram, that Sat Matra, that isness, that Satta Swarupa, Sugamam Nrinam. For those who are advanced level of meditators on Brahman, who have read the Upanishads, their minds are free from alterations which characterize rest of the world, all of us. His mind is different. His mind is very Vedanta is neither Buddhist nor from the Nyayikas these days. I noticed the biggest threat to Vedanta sadhana or the Nirvikalpa Samadhi or Brahmakar Vritti is neither from the Nyayikas, which we are facing now, or from the Buddhists. It's actually from social media because impossible. I'm finding everywhere the mind has become so restless. Forget about Brahman. It cannot be even managed to be productive the way it wants to be. We are scrolling, down scrolling. You're seeing this, you're seeing that. Newspaper, news item. What is the score? Then some makes. How foolish we have become. It was possible when we were children, just 3 decades back, where there was no smartphone. You pick up a book on a vacation day and you read the whole day because otherwise, what do? You read, you finish. That habit isn't there anymore. We have lost a lot of it. But, anyways, we'll come back to that and we will carry forward from here tomorrow. I just stop here. We'll do the Santi mantras and take forward the discussion tomorrow. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. That's it. God bless you.